All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as the Niners have hired Matt Eberflus as their assistant head coach in charge of defense, according to sources. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. The best barbecue in all of Northern California is Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're soon to open in Petaluma. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Also, thanks to Alomar Marina, voted Sacramento's favorite lunch spot. Sacramento sports fans' game day destination floating on the Sacramento River. Alomar Marina. Check them out, 5999 Garden Highway. Their website, alomarmarina.net. Thanks to Alomar Marina for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. And also thanks to Novato Chevrolet. Go see my man, David Corral. He's the man to go see for a screaming deal. Go check him out. He's at Novato Chevrolet. They got a great selection, great service. The owner of the dealership, Gus, is a good friend. And David Corral is the man to go see. So go see David. He'll give you a great deal. And tell him that Krug sent you. All right, let's talk a little bit about the 49ers. The story of the day, Tom Pelissero reporting the Niners have hired Matt Eberflus as their assistant head coach of defense. Eberflus is the former head coach of the Chicago Bears. He was most recently the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. He fills a key role vacated when Gus Bradley departed and joined Robert Saleh at Tennessee. So Eberflus, we see Robert Saleh has moved on and Raheem Morris takes Saleh's spot. And now Gus Bradley's moving on to join Saleh, and Matt Eberflus is taking Bradley's spot. So let's talk a little bit about Eberflus, head coach of the Bears from 22 through 2024. He's also been the defense coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts from 2018 through 2021, and the Dallas Cowboys last year in 2025. He's coached college football. He coached at Toledo. He coached at the University of Missouri. Was born in 1970, so he's 55 years old. He's born in Toledo, Ohio. Played linebacker at Whitmer High School and then played collegiately at Toledo. Started his coaching career like you would expect at Toledo, right? He was a grad assistant, student assistant coach in 1992, became a grad assistant in 93, became their recruiting coordinator and outside linebacker coach in 94 and 95. Was their outside linebacker coach exclusively 96, 97, 98. Their defensive backfield coach 99 and 2000. This is at Toledo. Then he jumped to Missouri where he was the defensive coordinator from 2001 through 2006. He was their defensive coordinator and associate head coach in 07 and 08. Then he went to the NFL. His first NFL job was with the Cleveland Browns as a linebacker coach in 2009 and 2010. He was a linebacker coach for the Cowboys in 2011, 12, 13, 14, and 15. He was their passing game coordinator in 16 and 17, and then got the job as the Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator in 2018, stayed there until 2021. The Bears hired him in 22 as their head coach. He was there 22, 23, and 24, and then become the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys and is now the 49ers assistant head coach of defense. So, you're talking about a guy who, is a good football coach, and yet he's not really a good head coach. If you look at his head coaching record, he's got 14 wins and 32 losses. So he spent the first 9 years of his coaching career at his alma mater at the University of Toledo in a number of different roles. And then when Gary Pinkel was named the head coach at the University of Missouri in 2001, he brought Eberflus with him as his defensive coordinator, and he also coached defensive backs. He's considered to be a big asset there. He developed a lot of really good players. Then he jumped to the Browns. In 2009, he left Missouri for the NFL, and he was hired by the Browns as a linebacker coach. And he worked under Eric Mangini, who also is a former Niner coach, and Rob Ryan for 2 seasons. And then in his first season, he transitioned David Bowens from outside linebacker to inside, and he finished with a career-high 71 tackles. And then 2011, he followed Rob Ryan to the Dallas Cowboys, joining Jason Garrett's staff as the linebacker coach. And he had DeMarcus Ware, and he had Sean Lee. He had some really good players there. In 2013, with Monty Kiffin replacing Rob Ryan as the team's defensive coordinator, Eberflus was integral in assisting the team's transition to a 4-3 scheme, along with Rod Marinelli, who obviously Lynch knows from Tampa Bay. So that's interesting. And then 2016, he looked at a bunch of DC positions, but they kept him in-house and made him the team's passing game coordinator. This is in Dallas. 2017, he guided their linebacker core. And then in 2018, with Josh McDaniels set to take the head coaching job with the Colts in 2018, Eberflus was hired to be his defensive coordinator. And just before the McDonald hiring was officially announced, McDaniels withdrew his acceptance and chose to stay in New England. And it was kind of a weird situation because Eberflus nevertheless joined the Colts as the defensive coordinator once Frank Reich was hired as the Colts head coach, in place of McDaniels. So he actually was going to go to be the DC for McDaniels, but then wound up being the DC for Frank Reich. And Frank Reich and Eberflus had never met, by the way. But Chris Ballard was very persuasive and was very strong in his conviction to Frank Reich that Matt was the right guy. So, the one thing that's kind of interesting too, because we know Chris Ballard and John Lynch are close. We know Chris Ballard and John Lynch have made trades before. I'm sure Chris Ballard recommended Eberflus highly to Lynch. So Eberflus was credited with instilling an ultra-demanding culture of hustle, discipline, and teamwork. And he ultimately helped to turn the Colts around from a 4-12 team in 2017 to a 10-6 playoff team in 2018. They even reached the AFC divisional playoff round that year. He inherited a defense that was finished 30th in the NFL in both scoring and total defense, and he turned the defense around in just one season to rank number 10 in scoring defense and number 11 in yards and total defense. So he's thought to be a very, very good defensive coach. He improved the Colts' pass defense from 28th in 2017 to 16th in 2018. So he's a guy that is a proven defensive coach. January of 22, the Bears named him as the 17th coach in their history of their franchise. He won his head coaching debut September 11th when the Bears beat the Niners 19-10 in a game that was the Trey Lance game with the monsoon, I believe, coming in Chicago. So they're getting a good defensive coach. He left the Bears. He was fired in November of 2024. And his last day was the Thanksgiving Day loss to the Lions. He had a late game decision to not take his team's final timeout. It was criticized widely. He got fired. And then he returned to the Cowboys to be their defensive coordinator in 2025. And the Cowboys in 2024 had one of their worst defensive statistical years in their history. And he helped turn them around in 2025. So 14-32 as an NFL head coach. That's a 3.04 win percentage. That's not very good. But this guy is a very good defensive coach. Him and his wife, Kelly, have 2 daughters. He's a family guy. And so now he comes to San Francisco and will do a lot of the same things that Gus Bradley did. Now, I don't know exactly what Bradley's role was. Some of the things that he did, I'm sure Eberflus will do. Eberflus may do some roles that Bradley didn't do. Bradley may have done some things that Eberflus won't do. But they're adding, I do like this because there is no cap for what you pay your assistant coaches. And having a lot of good coaches is a great place to start your rebuild. Why? Because there's no cap. You can have Eberflus and Raheem Morris. And this is, people always say, what would Eddie D do? This is what Eddie D would do. He would hire John Marshall and Bill McPherson. He would hire Ray Rhodes and George Seifert. He would have an abundance of top-tier coaches, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And that's what the Niners are doing right now. So I love it. I think it's a good move. I think Eberflus is a really solid football coach. and it can only help. It can absolutely only help. Thanks once again to Novato Chevrolet. Go see my man David Corral. Thanks to Sharp Corners Sports Cards and Collectibles. And of course, thanks to our good friends at the Alomar Marina. And thanks to our title sponsor, Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And thanks to you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.